Today I'm giving you my 6-month update after my mastectomy. So it's been 6 months since my bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction, and I thought I would come on here and give you an update about how I'm doing and how things are going. And this really serves as something for any of you who might be going through the same thing or who might have recently been diagnosed and think you might have to go through a mastectomy. I just want to give you some information, some kind of real-time things you can expect, because I know when I was going through it, I wanted to know the same thing. I wanted to know how people were doing 6 months later and a year later. So I am here to share that today with you. Also, to give some context, I go into a lot of detail about my diagnosis, about my specific procedure, why I chose it, all of those things on my podcast. So I have a link below to my full free breast cancer resource guide. It has all the links to workouts that I've done and things that I've used at home that have helped, and again, that podcast and commonly asked questions. So if you want a little more context around that and a little more details, please go find that link and listen to that podcast. And as a little backstory, I was diagnosed about 7 months ago with stage 0 breast cancer. It was DCIS, so ductal carcinoma in situ, and it was found by a routine mammogram. I didn't have a lump, I didn't have any symptoms. I had a routine mammogram, it came back abnormal, I had a biopsy, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer and referred to surgeons and oncologists. And I went through all of the testing and everything that needed to be done. And I ended up 6 weeks after that having a bilateral mastectomy. And I had reconstruction at the same time, meaning same surgery. I had implants put in by another surgeon. The surgeons worked together really closely. So again, if you have questions about that, kind of about why I chose that, why it was the right choice for me for what I had in the diagnosis, why the surgeons recommended that, you can go listen to that podcast. But that tells you a little bit about what I had done so that you can understand now where I'm coming from 6 months later. And another thing that I think is really important to explain is that my experience really involves the mastectomy and the reconstruction. Because of my pathology that came back later, I was extremely lucky in that I did not have chemotherapy, I did not have radiation. Those right now are not a part of my story, and I understand how lucky I am, so I can't comment on those things necessarily. There are a lot of great resources out there for that if you are going through that. One thing I can say that I've learned from this entire journey is that the breast cancer community is an amazing one and so helpful and so supportive. And so it might be hard to find some of that feedback, but start asking around, look for it. You will find guides in those areas if you do need it. So I'm gonna break this down into kind of 2 different areas, how I'm physically doing 6 months after surgery and how I'm mentally doing. And so we're gonna start with physically, and I have 2 different pieces to that too. So I'm gonna speak to what I can do physically, so like my activities, and then I'm also going to speak to how I feel physically. So let's talk about what I can do. So according to my doctor, I can do anything I want. All restrictions have been lifted, and that's according to my physical therapist as well. So I had 2 surgeons. Again, I had a plastic surgeon, that was for the reconstruction piece, and then I had a breast surgeon, that was for the mastectomy piece, and then I had a physical therapist that I saw regularly who specializes in breast cancer rehab. And so all of those together, I have been released, and that happened at about 4 months or so after surgery. I was released to do whatever I want. Now that's great. To me, that means, because I'm a physical therapist also, so I like having those guidelines. That means that the scar tissue is healed. It means that I am not in danger of hurting the surgery itself. So that's what that told me, and I really like to know that. But I can tell you, just because they say I'm able to do it, doesn't mean I feel like I'm able to do everything. I can do most things, right? Like I can do daily activities. I am back to working out. I am back to doing most of the things I want to do, but I'll be honest, I don't feel at my full strength whatsoever in certain activities. For example, push-ups, I can do 6 push-ups on my knees. that's it. Then I just am too weak to do anything else. So push-ups remain really, really hard. I was working on lat pull downs. Those are really hard for me. So anything that works my lats and my chest muscles are really hard from a workout standpoint. So I definitely still feel weak, but I'm lifting weights. I can do bicep curls with 12 to 15 pounds. I can do shoulder press overhead with 20 pounds. I can help move furniture if I need to. I can do all of my Pilates workouts. So I am working out. I am back to trail running, and actually that feels completely fine. I don't have a problem with that either. It's really some certain movements using certain muscle groups, which to me are my pecs and my lats. If you are someone who does like long arm hangs or you do pull-ups, that is very hard for me. Grip strength is really hard. Opening jars is actually still really hard. That was something that was impossible at the beginning, and it's still hard. So there are definitely still things that feel difficult. I'm still weak. I would expect that 6 months out. I would expect that all the way to a year. And so it doesn't surprise me. It's just something I like to point out. So I would say from a workout standpoint, I am doing almost everything I want to be able to do. I'm not scared of doing it. I definitely still feel weak, but that is to be expected. So now I'm going to touch on how I actually feel physically, because that's another story. I will be honest, I still feel very disconnected from this part of my body. Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like mine at this point still. And some of it's because I am still halfway numb, again, to be expected. So most of the time after a mastectomy, you will be completely numb forever, possibly. Many people are. I chose to have a nerve graft to try to get some sensation back. So that has worked to a point, and it can take 2 years for that to really work and for us to know if it is gonna work. So I am half numb. Like, if you get, when you get dental surgery and they numb you up and then the feeling just starts to come back, so you can just barely feel it in some places, but it's tingly in some and you get sharp pain in some. That's what it feels like all the time on my chest. That's just me. I don't think it's gonna be that way for everyone, but it is for me. So taking bras on and off can be kind of uncomfortable. I look for specific bras and specific shirts to wear that are the most comfortable. It is summer here, so we're in the pool a lot, and I've had to tell my kids to tell me if my suit's falling down because I can't feel it. I really can't. I spilled water on my shirt the other day, I couldn't feel it. So that is really what I can say on how it feels. I am not in pain for the most part. Occasionally those nerves will give me little zings, but for the most part, it's not pain. It is just discomfort and some numbness and just not feeling like mine. I don't feel fully comfortable in my body. I will say, some of you who have been following along know I was dealing with a lot of cording for the first 4 and 5 months after surgery, and that has almost completely resolved. So that's awesome. So I am so much better than I was. I just want to be honest and say 6 months out, I still don't feel like this is completely mine. I still only have half feeling. It's half numb. It's half weird. And that's how I feel in it right now. So let's touch on how I'm doing mentally. Honestly, I am doing really, really good. I understand completely and recognize how lucky I am to be in the place that I am. My oncologist told me I went into surgery with cancer and I came out without cancer. That's what my pathology showed. And I know how lucky I am. So I feel grateful every single day. I also feel a lot of guilt around that, around what I know people are still going through who have breast cancer, what probably many of you are going through watching this. I have had a friend pass away from breast cancer since I was diagnosed. So there is guilt associated with that, but there's also gratitude associated with that. I also feel like I had a lot of tools in my toolbox because I have such an extensive medical history, and I had been through so many surgeries that while I was completely shocked to get this diagnosis, I mean, completely shocked, and there's so much fear around a cancer diagnosis, so that was all new. I knew how to navigate the medical system, and that helped too. So I want to recognize that having those tools and being ready to get into the medical system can help. And I know I had that, so that was helpful as well. But in a lot of ways, it feels like a different part of my life that I'm still processing. Like, it was so shocking and it was so scary, and I am still processing so much of what's happening physically. Like, every day I recognize it. Every time I look in the mirror, every time I change clothes, I know this happened. I still have doctor's appointments at least for the next 5 years. I was at one just the other day. And so it's always there on my mind, but I try really hard to just focus on the gratitude and where I am right now and what I'm able to do. And I try to keep the rest of that and the fear at bay as best I can. And I think that's what we do. I think we just keep putting one foot forward in front of the other. And that's where I am. So thank you so much for being here. Again, check out my link below. You'll see a lot of different resources I have, but mostly I just want to say thank you to the community that supported me during this. I can't tell you how grateful I am. And for any of you going through this, you are not alone. That's all I can tell you, is that I promise you are not alone. I'll talk to you soon.